Hello, Tim. How are you today?
Sergey, thank you so much for having me, and I'm glad to be here, and I'm doing good.
Now, I'm going to ask you right away about your experience with E.T.s. Why there is so many sightseeing of UFOs, but there is nothing high quality so we can see it. Everybody has a cell phone. Everybody has a camera right now. Why there is no high quality videos or pictures of these UFOs?
Oh, well, first of all, there is a lot of high quality video material out there. I personally have seen it. I do have people in my Instagram community, loving community, by the way, and they from time to time send me these pictures, and they have incredible stuff like UFOs, silverish, shining, close up UFOs that they recorded. I have one girl that from Indonesia that has made direct contact with another species, and she was never into ufology before. And once she got into the woods, into the jungle in Indonesia, she suddenly heard these voices in her mind, and she approached it, and suddenly this being appeared. And we do have recordings on which species it is, what they do, and so on and so on. So it matches the reality. We do have these pictures, but now take in some factors. First of all, there are certain groups on this planet that take care. They have a long tradition of going into these sightings and taking away the footage. So everyone, like I know some people who were in the Las Vegas incident. There was like this person, you might have seen it on the news. Something came down, the Spanish-speaking family. Some 7-foot being was in their backyard. They flipped out. They had a camera. They had their smartphones. But later on, first of all, police will appear. Then certain military people will appear. And then people will appear that will say like, hey, can I have your smartphone? Not can I have your smartphone? Give me your smartphone. And then they will take some of the footage, and that disappears. That is number one. Number two is certain filters are put on. So if you try to make a photo of a moon from here, we all know that we've all been in the situation. We see this big, gigantic, beautiful moon in the sky, and then we try to make a snapshot with our phones, and nothing comes out from it other than like a little whitish dot on the display. So there is certain there are certain AI filters in the cameras and certain conditions and settings to the cameras that just make bad images in that way. And number three, and I want to add that too, is some beings out there do not like to be photographed, and we have seen major interference with electronics, sometimes on purpose even. So that they send out some time of signal that would like disturb the original recording. And it happened to me. It happened clear to me because I was like walking at night in Germany someday, and I had this amazing view of like one of these crafts. It was like one of these times where sightings all over the world were seen. And I was like, oh my goodness. I took out my smartphone. I made a genius video. I was absolutely shocked that it was so good. I watched it on replay and it was still good. And then I sent it to some of my friends. I have this one friend that I'm like always getting involved with these topics. So I sent him that video, and the next morning he didn't react. And I was like, what's happening? Why don't you react? And he was like, why do you send me a black video? And I looked at it, and in that very moment, my video was completely blacked out.
I would add here maybe number 4, that these videos, if they go online, they might be suppressed or, censored too.
Yeah, absolutely. There used to be a strong, I mean, people nowadays know that. It always been some kind of rumor that certain groups on this planet try to suppress the reality that there are ET beings. Truth is, there are ET beings, and yes, there are also groups that used to try to suppress the reality of it.
But why these groups try to suppress this reality?
Oh, that's a question that goes back into history, So the major outbursts of ufology and modern sightings, and again, we've been visited on this planet for thousands of years, And we have certain documentations of that. A lot of history has been altered, modified, burned down, and so on and so on. So that's a fact. That's a fact that we deal with. So the modern ufology, the modern visitation starts around Second World War, which is no wonder, because the universe, as the word implies, is a universe, is a singularity. So if there's like one portion of like one being that is almost behaving like cancer cells and bombing people into the ground, then other portions of this one singularity would naturally come in and see like, hey, what's going on here? And that happens. And we have files on the European side. The Europeans were a little quicker. David Grush, who's like one of the selected people that came forward as whistleblowers, he's talking about the UFOs that Italy, Mussolini, Italy, fascist Italy, was picking up in the 1930s. I know I've seen documents that the Germans have, the other Germans, the 1930 Germans, have picked up UFOs as well. They had certain departments. They had a department that was looking into UFOs before any other major military force in the world. So the Germans came first. And in 1947, we had this moment where the Americans got their hand on the nuclear bomb and all of that, and were like, had all of these nuclear bombs in their arsenal. The first nation to have successfully detonated one. So these beings obviously were interested in these nuclear sites. And that's where these major reportings happen. And the major crash, Roswell, is a thing. It's actually Corona. It's actually Corona, New Mexico, where it crashed. So the history of that is like, what happens? 1947. These Americans, they had no idea. They didn't know that E.T.s would exist. There were sightings, so-called Foo Fighters, along the way in the World War II. But people thought like, yeah, that's probably a German, that's a Japanese thing, that might be an American thing, because they didn't know. They didn't know what the enemy was doing. But in 1947, a real UFO crashed into the USA, and the US in that moment was confused. They didn't know what to do with it. They suddenly had they also had a different, standpoint in protecting the country and also collecting military and all that kind of stuff. So at that point, they felt the best thing would be to just like keep it as secure as possible, and observe the phenomenon, take it into observation, learn from it. And now we're here, like 70 years later, they have made improvements. They definitely developed from there. And now the reasons why we must have disclosure, and why we can have this conversation, you and I, Sergey, they are outweighing the reasons why there should be secrecy.
Okay, so there is Roswell, New Mexico. There is Area 51, if I'm not mistaken. This is the location you're talking about?
Yeah, so Area 51 at that time used to be a highly protected area. And probably the people in the US could explain better than me, because I've never been there. But this area around Groom Lake used to be a testing area, and it was like high security. The thing is, the crash happened in Corona, New Mexico. Allegedly, it was like a thunderstorm. We have different information today that it probably was shot down, not by the human side, but by another ET side that wanted the crash to happen to actually, initiate the process of disclosure of like, wow, we're not alone in the universe. Because Roswell has become one of the significant events in this conversation that we're having. So Area 51 used to be a testing area and became one of the top secret spots where they collected some of the material from that UFO crash and different other UFO crashes too. And nowadays there are many other different areas and different military bases. And Area 51 is like more like a shadow of its legend.
So you mentioned there were E.T.s that shot another E.T. So that means that there is good E.T.s and there is bad E.T.s.
That's an interesting question because it always comes down to the good and evil part in the universe. It's an ongoing question forever and ever. The question is always about the definition of what is good and what is bad. It's the group that I used to work for had put a definition to that, and they say like everyone who's like societally or socially acceptable and you can get along with them peacefully or constructively, cooperatively, maybe even beneficially in some way, these beings are good. And then there are like self-destructive beings and destructive beings that are considered bad. And the reality of this version of the universe, and again, there are other layers and other realities that we have to consider and that we need to keep in mind that they are. This version of the universe, which is a duality version, and a solar-based version, it comes along with certain competitive possibilities and also like war-type characters as well. So there are only 5% of beings that belong to the group of being bad. And 95%, the ratio is 95 to 5% beings that are great and beneficial and friendly and nice in this universe. And the further along you go in experience, the more we realize that this is like all the same being, that we are all embodiments of the same living organism, which is the universe. The more good beings we have. And some of the tremendous experiences that people make on this planet spiritually, connecting to what they describe as angels, what they describe as godlike divine beings, helpers from the other side, and so on. These are all mechanics and all aspects of the universe that are absolutely beneficial for the evolution and development of humanity.
Okay, so it's 95 to 5 ratio. Now, what is the ratio of good and bad on this planet?
It's statistically the same. This is kind of interesting. So we take this statistically. Of course, you can be in like, there are certain environments where the statistics are different. One of the typical examples for that is a prison. So if people are imprisoned on this planet, for example, then they would like encounter a situation where there are more socially unacceptable beings that people have to, be aware of. But if you take like the statistics of it, you will see that it all comes down to like a normalized resolution of that. So we have 95 to 5% all over the dualistic universe. And again, on this planet, it is very clear, I guess. We get along in our lives, and we are with beings that are absolutely friendly. And when we go into the day, we will only encounter beings that are okay. There are rare occasions on this planet as well, which is a mixed planet, where people encounter beings that might be chaotic or destructive or something. Even though the media and the news and Hollywood and all these movies portray it in a way that it's like there's like one grand villain around each corner everywhere, especially in New York City or something. The reality on this planet is 95% of all beings that you will ever encounter in your life are just okay, just friendly.
Okay, now, one question about E.T.s. Are there any E.T.s living among us on this planet that look exactly like us, that we basically can't even identify them?
Well, the short answer, yes. Yes, they are. And for many, many thousands of years too. And it used to be both a gift and an issue at times as well. The gift of that is we have hundreds of millions of beings on this planet that come from other realities that might have a certain background, because the universe is like, it's not, you only, as a soul, you don't live your life just once. The reality is a soul container, a quantum universe, keeps recycling information. So the soul is a thing, and reincarnations are a thing. And there are beings on this planet that belong to the category, and we've millions of them, hundreds of millions of them, that come from other realities and are born on this planet and are doing a job. And I would even say that a lot of the beings that, watch this interview probably belong to this group. Everyone that, has like a certain spirituality, for example, and certain ideas, certain exotic alien ideas, these beings might come from somewhere, from some experience, and now are living this earth experience. But then you also have beings that are indeed humans or look like humans, and beings that come in disguise as humans because they want to be here to help, because they want to be here to observe, to live amongst humans. So there is a high percentage that anyone in this life has met at one point an alien being on the street and didn't recognize them. And we know that. We also know that certain places, certain areas here are very attractive for other beings. But there's also a percentage of beings over history, and that is one of the reasons why the human society seems to be so chaotic. Over history especially. There are also some beings that take advantage of humanity being absolutely not prepared for other realities and other beings as well. And we have two types. We have identified two types of that. One type is these types of beings that come in disguise as humans and take advantage of the situation for their own benefit. And then we have like a certain type that is on purpose changing, modifying the reality from inside in order to make it, harder for humanity. And one of the ways they do this, and the term comes from the CIA, they use this term, they call this a holoform, which is there are certain beings that can alter their skin in a way that it looks like, human skin. In a way that an octopus does it. An octopus uses certain hormones in order to change its skin. That is something that certain other species can do. And then they use certain mind tricks to even convince someone that it's a human being. We ran into that. We know that. And human military is aware of that and is doing currently a much better job than ever before to prevent these beings from coming in. But again, there are millions of beings and many thousands more of beings that live amongst humans, and people have no idea. And they are good.
That's good that they are good. I like that. Now, is there any way for us to identify these ETs? ETs?
Yeah, I mean, it depends. It all comes down to the awareness. If you are aware that there might be beings that look like humans but are actually very benevolent ETs, then you might actually see that in beings. There are some hints that give it away. So some beings might be very tall. They have different eyes. They might be having different ears or something. But it's all usually, if these beings look like humans and they are not Earth humans, it's all within the parameters of possibility. And that makes it kind of hard for people that have no idea that things happen. Because something that we have observed with humans is that once they do not put their mind onto an observation and they are not aware of what they need to observe, which kind of pattern, they become really easy to trick in some way, right? So they can have something that's called a selective observation, which basically comes down to the human brain getting rid of all unnecessary information and data. And if people have no idea that what they are looking for, well, they will not see.
I understand you had communications with ETs. Any ETs reveal for you what's in the store for humanity, at least in our lifetime?
Yeah, absolutely. So the big thing about that, and I think humans are under the impression that there's like one source that is like guiding how things will turn out. And that is not the case. There is not one fraction in the universe that is like putting out a plan and then it comes right into reality and for everyone just in the way they want it. So there's not one single ruler over the universe. But it's a very, very complicated and complex process of all these beings involved. Because the reality is that each one of us is in this quantum universe creating our own reality bubble. But also these bubbles are overlaying and influencing each other. So sometimes there are like processes where E.T.s try to alter the design and the history of humanity. And sometimes it turns out to be there seem to be coming random things in and something happens that is completely different. So one example for that is we had contact to a interfrequential life form and they revealed to us that they were behind placing the LSD onto planet Earth. And they did so to prevent World War II from happening. So the LSD has been placed from their side, from where they come from, quite in the, pinpoint to an area that is around Germany. And again, you can see like the distortion there because it clearly it was discovered by Albert Hofmann in Switzerland. So it's close to Germany, And then Albert Hofmann did something unexpected. The first moment when he was discovering the LSD, he put it away again. And he came back to the LSD many, many, many years later in the 1940s when the war was already going on. But their hope was when they put the LSD right into the area of Germany and they would discover the LSD and basically the hippie movement would replace the militaristic movement in the 1930s, that would have turned out very different. That would have changed the course of history forever. If people would have taken LSD and become aware of this all connectedness, which later on in the 1970s became the strongest peace movement this world has ever seen on a completely different continent. It originated in Switzerland, but in the US, it was like motivating millions of hippies to actually go into yoga, meditation, and form all the spirituality that we have today. So you can see that there are plans from the other side and from other beings that try to help us. But sometimes the way that the universe works internally randomly, there's no real randomness, but in the way that it behaves in a quantum universe, it turns out differently. So what we see, and to answer your question, is that the planet itself is going through a cyclical phase. And these cyclical phases increase the evolution and the consciousness of beings on this planet. Not only this planet, but the whole universe is doing that. It's like an evolutionary process that we assert of, like the ocean wave is a cycle that happens everywhere. So what happens is that consciousness is on the rise. So it's a cyclical process. And what happens is that the consciousness of humanity and animals too, we will see all these Instagram videos where dogs are suddenly pushing buttons and parrots are talking and apes are using Instagram and all that kind of stuff. So consciousness on this planet is on the rise. And when we see that, we realize that these moments are here. So what's in it for us is that we come we can. It's a high probability that we form a more holistic society, that we will leave the old stagnating system behind us and that we form certain realities. And there are many, many, many plans how to do that. And there are many, many ways to do that. And even though there are, E.T.s that have their own agendas and try to help us in that way, some try to prevent it from happening. It's a small portion, but they're also in that game too. It mostly comes down to us being in this reality field, what we are able to accept, what we are able to make with it, and how we come together. And one thing that I'm doing is I'm creating this social media community. I'm also doing these monthly meditations where we all come together on my YouTube called All Shift Happily Now. And we really influence the reality field from inside. We have people around the world that come together once a month, and we connect our minds together, and we create the mental mass that is needed for a happy shifting. So that is one of the many agendas, how this can turn out.
I spoke to some NDEs, near-death experiencers, and they say that they live their lives in different incarnations and different variations of themselves all at the same time. So the same thing I would say about the humanity or about the planet, that it lives different scenarios all at the same time. For example, you think about, you made a mistake in your life, and then years later you come back and say, gosh, I wish I didn't do that. I wish I made a different choice. It would be a completely different life right now. So that's one of the scenarios. That's another life that you are living.
The reality is that the universe is everything at all times in just one spot. So that is like what you describe as everything happens simultaneously. The interesting thing about the reality that we perceive right now, right here, and again, there are multiple other realities that are happening as well. This one is a linear one. The way that bodies are structured, and especially, human bodies, they are structured in a way that they can linearly take on, choose for a certain moment of time. You do something yesterday, and then you do something consecutively on the day today, and you do something tomorrow. So go from A to B to C. This makes up this whole illusion of life that becomes a linear thing. And it becomes tangible realities by us, always confirming to that again and again and again. We wake up, we look into the mirror, we see we're still us, right? So then we continue being that. What shows, and some of the experiments that we've done show that all these other versions of us, including the upcoming versions of us that we haven't yet chosen for, they all exist as well. So they have taken some experimental subjects in these projects, and they have taught them some, for example, languages. And we've seen that people have been altered and been convinced that in the past they have been speaking Chinese instead of English. And they completely changed. They woke up another morning and they only spoke Chinese. So the reality they were in was completely changed from their past, and it changed the present as well. So all these layers do exist at one time, but the way that we perceive it and the way that the bodies function and this reality functions, it does give us the illusion of things happening, linearly.
Okay, now I know you talked in your Gaia series about being number 6. Can you tell us more about being 6?
Yeah, absolutely. It was one of the most beautiful moments, I guess, in my life. So the reality at that time was that I many years in these projects, I came so far down the rabbit hole that I was commissioned with contacting the Grays. So I was in these projects where we were doing direct contact with this species called the Grays. They are quite an invasive species in the way that they appear in people's lives. So we have numbers that 30 millions of US Americans have seen some traces of them, have even met them, have been contacted by them, have seen UFOs in the skies. Very small portion of that remembers these moments, but we have estimated numbers of 30 million US Americans only that have at least encountered a UFO, bypassing or seen something in their bedroom and woke up next morning and thought oh, that was a strange dream. So these things happen. I gotta say that was it was challenging at times, doing these projects, and they went on for quite a time. And then I was like at a moment where I thought like, okay, this is like a lot, because the Greys are very much involved with strategic thinking and altering and all that kind of stuff. And then I was assigned to a different project where we contacted an interfrequential life form. And what that means is that everything in the universe is assigned to a certain level of frequential movements. Just as much as you can tune a radio receiver to a different frequency, you can basically tune the reality to a different frequency and would then receive a different reality and different being as well. And this turned out to be being 6. We had a different name in German, and I translated it to English as being 6. It is the 6th level of consciousness. It's a very highly experienced level of us all in some way. And it includes 99.9999999 of all beings in the universe. So it's a large complex. It's a large complex. And in my own words, it's the closest that I've ever come to see God in a way. I know they wouldn't like that because, you know, it's still all of us. And God is a weird word, but it's a loving energy. And it's including countless civilizations, individual beings that have just ascended masters, whole complex civilizations and other realities too. So it's a wide field of beings that are like concluded in this one intelligence as well. And it was just pure beauty. It was just beautiful in the way they were just, you know, coming from the Greys who were like hands on and going in the situation and all that stuff. The being 6 was just like from the heart. It was loving. It was telling us it's all okay. The universe is designed to be a happy home for everyone. It's designed, and along the way we all will eventually be in this kingdom of beauty and love and just at the right moment. They told us that we are in the moment, we are like pixel in a frame that get reorganized so that the universe really learns what we want as plants, where we do flourish in the best way possible. And then over time we get we make it there. And we get to this place where we feel the universe from our heart and from as a home. And in that moment, the universe zooms out, sees the picture, and says like, "That's it. That's us."
Interesting. Now, these beings that you contacted, you saw them in a physical form, or there was like more vibrational contact?
No, I saw them in a physical 3D form, and it was quite interesting. So what they do is they use these coils in order to suppress, and not suppress, but to press down and compress the frequencies of the room. So you got to imagine that we're all like particles, and these particles and atoms are buzzing around. You know, everything is vibrating, even though it looks like very solid. This wall looks like it's a stone wall, so it appears to be quite solid. Reality is, even in that stone wall, the matter and the electrons and everything is like buzzing around. So if you compress these frequencies to a certain degree, you can make this reality bubble and the other reality bubble merge in some way. And I found that really interesting because, to me, I saw them as like a geometry. So I was I was sitting in this container, in this room, in a certain facility, high security facility, and they were compressing these frequencies, which it wasn't like painful or anything. It just happened. And then through these compressed frequencies, like this blue crisp light appears. Blue crisp, and it was changing. It was like a changing geometric field, and it was so crisp, Sergey. I've never in my life encountered something so high resolution. It is like, after that, I compared that to the first moment when we had these 8K televisions, and then you switch back to your old 1990s television and watch like the World Cup, soccer World Cup from 1990, where Germany won. It's just like all blurry. It's all blurry and pixelated. And then you watch the 8K version of that and you're like, my God, this is real. It turns out that they are emitting a very large amount of data compared to what is possible to receive and perceive on this planetary sphere called Earth, right? So there are versions and there are beings and realms and realities that are so full of data that it's very hard for an Earth reality to even perceive that amount of data. By bringing and compressing these frequencies, these data streams can then be reduced to a point where we contact them. So it's comparable to, like in like 30 years ago or something, when you had like 1 Mbit of storage. That was like a lot, and today, 1 Mbit, it's just like there are some Christmas cards that have more storage than that. So that they also were talking to me. So I clearly heard a voice, and it was German as well, in perfect German. But it was not localized, and it was not a localized field of audio, which usually, and you know that as a filmmaker, audio has this tendency to go off from walls, so it's echoing. So basically, if someone's speaking from a certain direction, your ear can pick up where it's coming from, because it's a localized field of audio waves that interact with the surface of the building. But this being was able to communicate in a way that you clearly hear the voice, but it's coming from everywhere at the same time. It's very spheric in a weird way. And interestingly enough, when you go back thousands of years to the Bible times and the Egyptian times and so on, these people back then report these angels or God or whatever, the voice of God in the sky that was talking to them, and the voice, it's clear, it's even like almost literally word by word in the Bible and in the Egyptian text and different other texts, that they hear this voice that talks to them, and it doesn't come from anywhere, it's just everywhere at the same time. So that is a sign that someone in a higher frequency is compressing and bringing down information to this realm.
What was the most shocking or surprising for you and your contacts with these beings?
Oh my goodness, what is the shocking? I think the first encounters with the Grace were quite shocking in the way that it's like, I really got used to the chills that you have when you encounter a different reality and a different exotic being and an alien, because interestingly enough, we all, and we know that from the 1990s, we all vibrate in a certain frequency and we all emit certain energies. That is why when you find someone very nice and friendly, then you resonate in a positive way. You feel that good vibe and that good energy. And now imagine there are beings that their energy field or their frequency, their radiation is 1 billion times stronger than the regular human on this planet. So just being in the same room with these beings, with this presence, leaves your body in chills. And even if your mind is like after, I don't know, 100 times when I saw them, it was still the same roller coaster ride to just be there, because the body reacts. It feels like electrical charges that go through your whole body. Your body has goosebumps all over. There are like certain weird energies that go off on and off your spine when you're there. There's like a certain moment of fright, of fear as well, because the body itself is a different intelligence compared to the mind. The mind can be prepared to jump down a bungee with a bungee rope and just jump down a cliff or something. But the body will naturally stop you and will take care of that and produce this type of fear moment. So even after like 100 times with them in the same container, it was still something that moved me very much. And later on, from the US side, I learned that there were like US Navy SEALs, built people, that have been in weird situations that would always reject and will always reject. But these people collapsed. They have collapsed. I've talked to people in the military, and they said like, man, Tim, we've seen people fatally collapse because their bodies couldn't stand the amount of vibrations that were in these rooms. So that was shocking. The most healing moment for me was clearly my communication with being six, and also with other beings that are so lovely and so supportive, and I credit them so much for what's happening in this world. And the more we put our minds to, we are not alone, and there are friends and there are other beings, benevolent beings out there that help us and that are ready, they are ready to protect and to help and support us. All they are waiting for is that each one of us wakes up in the morning and says, I welcome friendly beings in. I welcome the protection in. I welcome the happy shift, all shift happening now. I welcome this in. In the very moment we do so, these beings that stand on the line and observe the planet, they say, oh yeah, they called me. That's it. That's my moment. And then they will act.
So these beings, they might be angels. Some people call them angels.
Yeah, I mean, the reality of religion, that is something, there is a lot of historical alteration and man, there are some political groups on this planet that really have exploited religion in order to make their cases, But all these religions on the planet, they if you really look into that, you find bits and traces of how the universe really is. And you find evidence that there are other entities and other loving beings. And if you want to call them angels, many of these beings and many of these entities, because one of the most asked questions is like, hey, Tim, how are these called? How are they called? Well, some do not even have names. That's something very human, So if we want to call some of these aspects of the universe, if we want to call them angels, that is very fine to me.
Are you still in touch with being six?
Yeah, I mean, so first of all, ever since I feel my reality and I see my reality and other people's reality through the eyes of being six, I do very much believe that everyone who's watching right now and everyone who's like involved with all these topics, there's a reason why you hear that. I do believe, and we know that being six has 300 to 500 million people on this planet at this very moment, because it's such a vast realm of beings that have chosen to come here. So being six has taken some of what they called their own family and placed these beings here as babies. They were born as babies in the form of humans, but they do the work and they contribute to what being six is. And so I do believe and I do see my reality through that at all times. But there is practical, physical, 3D, real contact, and that is possible too. So the planet itself goes through not only like a evolutionary cycle. So the planet is not only going through a evolutionary cyclical phase, but everything on smaller portions is also going through cycles. You can see that, well, quite obviously, when you wake up, it's day. When you go to bed, it's night. So that is a cycle. At certain times in the year, in the solar year, the planet itself comes through certain relations to the sun, where we're talking about equinox here, equinox times, where frequencies naturally get compressed. That is also the reasons why you then have like the longest days of the year and the shortest days of the year. So naturally, certain frequencies get compressed. And if you really want to make contact to being six, then this is the time where these different frequencies naturally get compressed in such a way that you can make visual contact. And I've done that with a good friend of mine. He's a little bit like he's been with me on that journey for quite some time. So there are certain places on this planet where these frequencies are very very right for the contact. And these sites usually relate to certain historical, ancient, religious, so-called religious sites. So one of them, for example, is Stonehenge, clearly. Where you at certain times have all these crop circles and interferences with different other realities as well. But there's also in Germany, for example, the Extern Stones is like one of the major areas to make contact. So it is clearly possible to make contact at certain times. If you go into certain revelations like the Bhagavad Gita or certain Vedic texts, you can clearly see that these people went into meditation and they perceived certain context, they perceived certain information from which they then put in their own words. So that is clearly happening. A third point, which is also happening, I'm super happy about that actually, and let's say excited about that. So currently the world is going through a political phase where direct contact is not possible or like desired currently, which will change in the next coming years. But what we're doing is Gaia has asked me to make contact to the Grace. And there are certain communication channels that are possible. And for example, the Grace do have certain bodies on this planet, certain material on what they call material on this planet that they can just inhabit and they can speak through these beings. And so they look like typical humans, but you have a gray consciousness inside of them, and they are talking then to humans. So what we do, and I suggested that, and let's make this manifest that this Gaia show, also Gaia show is coming, because then we have the first real moment talking to an ET species. We've already recorded a pilot to that. It was absolutely fascinating because the Greys told us that they are involved with the planet for thousands of years, that they take care, they see themselves as gardeners. They are also, certain governmental groups see them a little, they have certain thoughts about them, positions to them and so on. But all in all, it's a really rare and beautiful opportunity for us to actually make direct contact with an alien race.
Let me ask you about your work, what you do. If you'd like to share your information, where can people find more about you, about your work? Maybe you have a book, I don't know.
So I'm putting out on my Instagram for everyone who would love to follow me. It's tim.tactics on Instagram and Tim Tactical on YouTube. I'm putting out almost every day these wisdom clips, 1-minute clips. I'm putting out information on Gaia on my YouTube so that people really are prepared and getting the best information out there possible. And that's what I do. And if I can also call in everyone to these monthly meditations, each 24th of 2024 on YouTube. We do these live meditations. We have guests there. We have different world-class speakers there. And what we really do is we focus our minds together because after all, this is a mental reality. It could be described as a dream if we wanted to. If we know how a lucid dream works and if we all stick together in that dream, we can alter it. And that's what we're doing on these all shift happening now meditations.
Now, one more question, Tim. What's your definition of freedom?
Oh my goodness, Sergey, I love that question. I've never ever been asked that before. That's pretty dope. Well, my definition of freedom is that each of us is conducting our own and creating our own universe. And we all are free in doing that. There is because that's the free will of all of us. That's one of the only rules and inevitable factors of this universe, that we are all free to create our own experiences. because ultimately this universe is creating its own experience as well. It is the creator. We are the creators. So I believe that everyone has the right to create their own reality, should do so, must do so, is honored to do so, and responsible to do so. And that also includes that there are beings that, might have something that might not be acceptable for other beings, but they are also allowed to do that. But they should be away from these beings that want to be living in peace and harmony and so on. And overall, the universe is such a huge place that nothing, first of all, nothing can get lost in the universe. In a quantum universe, nothing gets lost. And second of all, there's always space and room for someone's definition of what their home and their freedom is.
Yeah, one more comment here I'm going to make about creation. You said every person is creating its own life. This word creation is very deep and interesting word, because God is creating the universe and everything is creating. And then God creates through us. This is why we have this desire always to create. Somebody's painting a painting, somebody's writing a book, somebody making a movie, someone is making a podcast, someone is sharing the information. We all create all the time. And it feels like God is playing this game through us.
That is a very good observation, and it's a very true observation as well. Because the creative aspect of the universe is like one of the main driving forces behind the world. And interestingly enough, if you want to know how to make it very far in life, then the best thing, and each and every ancient text will tell you that, and each and every highly advanced ET being will tell you that, and I tell you that, if you go with joy into your life and with joy for creation, you will be very persistent, successful, and loved in your life for long time.